This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Director of Housing Policy, Stephanie Watkins-Cruz.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you all are having a great week so far. We're going to go ahead and kick it off. We have a special guest today on our call. We have Dr. Latanya Agard from the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness. Dr. A comes to the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness with a wealth of leadership experience within the faith community, higher education, nonprofits, and mental health. She holds several degrees, including a BS in chemistry and an MA in English from the University of Alabama, an MDiv from Duke University Divinity School, and a Doctor of Ministry from Louisville Presbyterian Theological Seminary. Integrating her skills, knowledge, and experience, which are plentiful, Dr. A has broadened her justice work by opening her business, Bespeak Solutions, Inc., as a North Carolina fee-based practicing pastoral counselor associate and transformational specialist, and she provides narrative and life-informed mental health care workshops, presentations, and consultant services. In 2021, she joined the North Carolina Coalition to End Homelessness, and this collaborative relationship changed and challenged the staff and board of directors to redefine its values and reframe its mission and vision under her leadership. And she now has is still serving as executive director and continues to lead the organization and serve homeless families in North Carolina. Welcome, Dr. A. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back.
So today I just want to talk a bit about what came out recently, some context. The 2025 Annual Homelessness Assessment Report, Part 1, was released a little over a week ago, even though it was about 6 months later than when it's normally released. And this report includes point-in-time count data, which provides a snapshot of the number of people experiencing homelessness across the U.S. on a given night. And this report particularly showed that nationally, homelessness decreased slightly by 3.4% for the first time since 2016. But when looking at the big picture, homelessness still remains near an all-time historic high. So what are your reactions to this national trend?
I'd say a few things when I think about this particular report. The first thing I think the report shows us is that the effort that has been put into housing first programs and policies are finally, we're finally seeing some positive result that we could see statistically, that when we fund programs well and when we continue to do the work and support people who are on the ground, we do see decreases in homelessness overall. However, what we also know is that those programs are still not funded as well as they should be funded. And so homelessness remains at a near all-time historic high for many reasons. One, we are living now in a very, very difficult season for those who are doing this work. Not only are we experiencing a variety of cuts and delays at the federal level, but we are also experiencing a lot of squeezing at the state level. Here in North Carolina, we still don't have a budget. And so, agencies or programs that rely on funding from the state are experiencing, I'm sure, anxiety or delays as well. And so when we experience those things at those two levels, we know that programs can't operate optimally. In addition to that, we have seen explosive growth in the cost of living, not only rental costs, mortgage costs, but also the cost of really daily items that people need to live. And as those costs explode and continue to go up, wages are not keeping pace with that. And so we're finding that more and more people are on the brink of losing their homes. So we have more people experiencing housing instability, which means that it could take one traumatic event. It could be the loss of a job. It could be a sickness. It could be a car breaking down. It could be a host of things that could move a family from being stably housed to losing their housing. And so while we are seeing some slight decreases, which is promising, We also know that those decreases cannot be sustained if we continue to see the explosive growth of other costs while wages and other types of support remain stagnant. I'm very concerned right now because at the federal level, of course, we are experiencing significant delays and significant threats of reductions in funding and supports, which means that if we are making headway to get more people housed, we know that the season we're going into next will be much more difficult.
Yeah, no, exactly. Thank you for that. And I think also what the report revealed, moving from the national trend to the state level, is the report showed that North Carolina in particular experienced the highest percent increase in people experiencing homelessness, 33% to be exact. And that's the highest of any state between 2024 and 2025. Hurricane Helene resulted in the damage or loss of more than 74,000 homes in September of 2024, which is what the report suggests drove this increase. Can you talk a little bit about, what types of disaster-related shelter assistance programs does the point-in-time count include? And do you anticipate that we will continue to see an increased number of people experiencing homelessness as a result of Helene in the years to come?
Thanks for that question. I appreciate the fact that we are still paying attention to to our neighbors in Western North Carolina who experienced Hurricane Helene and are still working to recover and to rebuild their lives in that part of our state. Our hearts and continue to be with them, but we need more than goodwill to go toward them. We need programs, we need financial support, and we need infrastructure so that those things can happen. When we look at the PIT count from 24 to 25 for North Carolina, we see an additional almost 4,000 people were counted on PIT night between 2024 and 2025. Many of those folks were counted because of Hurricane Helene. During Hurricane Helene, we know that the Red Cross and other programs, including FEMA, provided temporary shelter for those residents in order to help them restabilize after that trauma. And so those kinds of disaster-related shelter were included in the PIT count. So while we don't normally include folks who are receiving assistance necessarily or who are living in hotels, this year that number swelled because we have folks who are living in hotels, folks who are in temporary shelters because of Hurricane Helene. And of course, that swelled our number. This is not to say that those people were not literally homeless, because they were on that night because of that event. But it does provide a point that is not what we would say not normal from 24 to 25. So we know that those numbers swell there. I'm glad that they received that support, but my concern is whether or not we are continuing in our state and at the federal level, providing the kind of support that folks need to continue to rebuild their lives. We know that, unfortunately, when the headlines change, often our priorities change as a society and as a culture. People forget, but it's hard to forget, and it's hard to not realize that our Western North Carolina neighbors still need a lot of support. I do anticipate that we'll continue to see an increased number of people experiencing homelessness as a result of Helene. And this is simply because we still need a lot of infrastructure. We know that it often takes years for some people to receive the benefits that are due to them from FEMA or other organizations that are helping them to rebuild. And so we do anticipate, unfortunately, seeing that number remain high or higher than what we would consider normal. We also know that, people may not have an opportunity to rebuild in the places where they were living. there may be areas that are, that are simply not safe anymore to rebuild. And that may mean people will have a hard time figuring out what to do next or where to build. And that could prolong their experience of homelessness. So unfortunately, whenever there's a natural disaster like this one, our neighbors in the East are much more familiar with this. We know that the trauma that people experience doesn't end just because the headlines change. We need to continue to provide resources and support for infrastructure, for homes, for rebuilding businesses so that people can continue to rebuild their lives.
No, exactly. And, this is not your first time on this call, of course. Each time we've had this call and this conversation over the last few years, although I think this is the latest we've had it because the report has come out so late. We've asked similar questions about the most recent report, but I would like to, briefly hear your thoughts about what you've seen and learned in the last few years regarding homelessness and the level of need in North Carolina. So just, comparatively, what have you seen, both taking into consideration Helene, but also knowing over the last few years what the kind of landscape has been like?
That's a great question. When I think about the overall number decreasing in the annual report that HUD put out, I was like, this is great. We're seeing some headway. But when I drive through North Carolina, I still see a tremendous amount of need. And I feel like I'm seeing more need rather than less need. I'm seeing more people who are either on the streets. I see more people who are seeking help through programs and other support services. And so it does give me a level of pause to wonder, what is missing and what can we do to continue to bring the resources that we need to North Carolina. One of the things that I decided to do recently, instead of taking the highway home, I drove through rural North Carolina from the beach home. And I learned something on that drive. I saw so many areas that were economically depressed. Lots of homes boarded up, lots of buildings abandoned, incredible economic need. And that's one of the driving causes, obviously, is that, people need an opportunity to continue to earn a living wage so that they can maintain their housing. So we need more housing. We need to be more innovative about how we develop that housing. It's not just building more, but I wonder, all of these buildings that I see that are not being used, these homes, these spaces that are boarded up, what could we do that is innovative in order to use the inventory we do have in order to give people safe, stable, clean, affordable shelter? And then what can we do to include the business or economic infrastructure in order to help people to continue to support themselves and rebuild their lives and to get other resources that they need? What I've learned also is that, what we see in urban and rural is very different. But my eyes are continuing to be opened, and I see a greater level of need and a need to be more innovative, especially in our rural communities.
Thank you so much, Dr. A. So in our last minute, I would love to really ask you what transitioned away from talking about the need momentarily, although that's never far from our minds. What is bringing you hope? What is bringing you hope as it relates to advocating for policies and programs and resources in this work, and for those experiencing and transitioning out of homelessness? What is bringing you hope, and what's making you excited?
Well, what brings me hope is being able to be in solidarity, not only with people who are experiencing the trauma of homelessness, but with folks like you and our friends, the rest of our friends at the Housing Coalition, and our other friends who are advocating around the state and at the national level. I am hopeful because I know that NCCEH is not in this fight alone, that we're fighting alongside and with other people who have amplified the voices and are making headway when it comes to policies. I'm also hopeful because for the first time, we have a housing bill at the federal level that very well could, make some significant difference for folks who are in need of change. At the state level, again, I think my hope lies in knowing that if we persist and we keep telling the story and we keep lifting the experiences of those who are experiencing homelessness, that some of the callous will fade and we will get some justice. We'll get a budget that aligns with those values that I think we all hold, and that is that every life is precious and every person has a need for shelter, and that we'll find a way to do that here in North Carolina.
Wonderful. Also thankful to be in solidarity with you in this work, Dr. A. Thank you, as always, for joining our housing call. And for those listening, we will still be releasing our call notes with the same reports and events and resources and news updates on the federal and state level. So look for that in the coming day or so. We'll also be releasing a network-wide housing priorities for North Carolina survey that will be released with our call notes and will be open until July 10th. That will help inform our policy agenda for 2027. So a big shout out again. Thank you so much, Dr. A, for joining us. I hope you all have a great rest of your week, and we will talk to you next time.